I'm the president of TWIG, and I am so excited to be with y'all this morning. I say this every single month, but I can't believe it's April. It's just flying by. It's so crazy. And I hope everybody's having a good April Fool's Day and thinking of some good, funny pranks. I feel like I can never think of any. So if you have any good ones, let me know. But today we have Greg Wilson, the founder of Fibonacci Inc., which is the only manufacturer of HempWood, a sustainable hardwood alternative internationally. With nearly 20 years in the building industry, Greg's presentation will familiarize you with this product and the inventive, sustainable solutions that it creates. So, Greg, I'm so excited you're with us today, and I will pass it on to you.
Alrighty. So, where is Bing at? Let me see if my wife's on there. And I'm going to put on my headphones. That way you guys can hear me better. So, can everybody see me?
Yep.
Okay, Bing said she's here. So my wife and I are living in Murray, Kentucky. We moved here from China in 2018. And we are part of the Agricultural Hemp Innovation Center in the Hudson School of Ag at Murray State University, where they were the first university to do trial crops of hemp, which is turning out to be one of the most sustainable crops that you can plant on a mass scale. And the idea of that comes from hemp pulls more carbon from the air than it uses to harvest it or get it out of the fields. And it grows with a lot less additives, whether that's fertilizers or nitrogen or any of the different weed killers, pesticides, herbicides, than your traditional crops like corn. So if anyone here is into farming, you would know that corn has the greatest value for a major crop that you can get as far as dollar-wise. And beans come next. Each one of those are about 40% of the annual crop grown in the United States. Beans are actually used, they started as a cover crop in order to add nutrients back into the soil, and have then changed to being something that is sought after for making money, especially this year, because beans are up to about $15 a bushel, where just 3 years ago, they were half of that. They were $8. So people are constantly trying to find what fits into that rotation. The last 20% of the crop that's going to be out there, because people are going to go corn and then beans. And if you do beans, you do winter wheat as well, to try to make up for some of that difference in between the value you get from corn. Corn has the highest requirements for additives to the soil. It has the least benefit for pulling carbon out of the air, things like that, but it has the highest dollar value for the farmer. And mainly that is because it goes to feeding cows. So cattle feed is the main consumer. It's like 80, 85%, something like that, of the reason corn's grown in the United States. So people grow corn to then feed cows, and then humans eat those cows. So that's kind of the way that agriculture has been for the last 30 or 40 years. It's obviously changing all the time. And in different regions, it's a little bit different, but that's kind of the way it works here in Western Kentucky. We're kind of on the southern end of the Corn Belt. And trying to figure out things that can switch that up or change that up. Tobacco used to be a big part of Western Kentucky. And tobacco has taken a back seat once they figured out some of the negative things that does to people when you're smoking and things like that. And a replacement for tobacco has been hemp. The problem is people got too excited, too quick, planted too much, and the market had not caught up with that yet. And so in 2019, the first year that it was legal to grow across the United States, there was about 4 or 5 years of hemp grown worth of what the market actually wanted. And so the following 2 years was a real drop off in the hemp industry as far as farming goes. So now it's starting to creep back up. A lot of that excess hemp that was grown specifically for oils and CBD, which do have their place as a vitamin or as some sort of food supplement. A lot of that stuff has been saturated into the market. It has dried up a lot of the inventory that was sitting around in barns for the last couple of years. And now people are actually starting to get back to what hemp was originally sought after, which is the seed on the top of the plant, the flower on the top of the plant, and then the stalk for building materials, animal bedding, those type of things. So with the process that my wife and I do here in Murray, Kentucky, what we really need to figure out now is getting the grassroots movement out there so people know who we are and what we're doing. And we met Beth 2 years ago or a year and a half ago at the farmers market, and she kept talking about this group. And so Beth was saying, hey, you got to let people know. It really starts with the decision maker in the household who's going to use sustainable products. And it looks like we got a whole room full of decision makers here. So trying to figure out where hemp belongs in the sustainability building materials segment, as well as a lifestyle choice. So with being a lifestyle choice, people need to choose what's right rather than what's cheapest or readily available. And the society that has been created by, you could call it a conspiracy or corporations or whatever you want, but the last 40 or 50 years, the consumer society is a one and done. You buy something, you use it once and you throw it away. And that's even trickled down into your building materials. So unfortunately, planned obsolescence in materials such as vinyl flooring is good for about 10 years. The average person stays in a house for 7 years. They figured that out. They can make a inexpensive plastic product that can be put into your home, and it lasts a little bit longer than the average stay when people now rip out their floor and throw it away after 10 years because it was cheap when they put it in, rather than your hardwood floors that when you buy a house and you pull up the old carpet and you see hardwood floors underneath of it, you say, wow, these things have character. This is what we want. This is what people are looking for. And so trying to get back to that, where it's a product that's made locally, in our case, it's grown locally, and it can last that longer than the person's going to live, not just longer than you're going to live in that house, is what we're kind of after. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to try to figure out how to do this quick presentation, and y'all can see what we do on our farm in Western Kentucky. So thank you everybody for having us on here. My wife and I, Bing, we moved to Western Kentucky about 4 years ago. We set up the one and only HempWood factory in the world, and now we have 2 of them. We have all of our products are locally grown or locally sourced. It's 100% made in America. Our HempWood factory is actually on a farm, and my wife and I live on the first organic farm in Callaway County. So on our home farm, a little bit about us before we get into the product is we have cows, which we raise those, they're grass fed. We actually barbecue a cow about every 6 months for all of our employees at the mill. We have cookouts, especially now the weather's getting good. We'll have cookouts multiple times a week. We have chickens, and we feed our chickens some hemp seeds and stuff like that. We have a pig, we have a cat. We have 2 different areas that are, I guess you could call them an orchard. There's something like 30 or 40 different fruit trees on the farm in 2 different areas. We have grapes, we have berries, we have mushrooms, we have herb gardens, there's an asparagus garden, there's ginseng back in the woods. There's all these different things that have been planted by the actual landowner where we lease it from. When the farm became organic in 1999. And so it's got all these cool little surprises that we find when we take like walks through the woods. And we'll be walking through the woods and you find that the actual farm lane and some of the trails are planted with garlic going along the sides of the trails. And you don't even notice it until you realize what the plant or the flower looks like. And then you pick it and that's what you eat for dinner. So that's kind of our little oasis away from everything. Not being farmers traditionally. My wife actually came from a city of 12 million people. And now you have to climb on the roof to see the neighbor's light at nighttime. So that's what we do personally. And then as far as a business, HempWood, if you look at this logo, this thing has been developed over the last couple of years, but you can see the green in HempWood. It's self-explanatory what we make, but you'll see that tree that grows through the O, and that stands for Fibonacci, because the Fibonacci sequence is nature's algorithm, and it just so happens to be the most efficient use of space, being the carbon sequestration ratio of hemp, how much carbon it pulls from the air, as well as our compression ratio when we compress the hemp to make HempWood after we've used a soy-based adhesive. That compression ratio means that HempWood is literally carbon squared. So about the company, Fibonacci is HempWood. HempWood is the product that we make. We've got 2 trademarks and 2 patents on it in the US, Canada, Australia, European Union, and then we got 1 patent in China and India that are in the process. This technology actually dates back to the 70s. It's called scrimber technology is what it derived from. And that's what people were trying to use pulp grade logs to turn it into a solid grade log. So I started working in this industry back in college in 2003. And that makes me sound old because it's coming up on 20 years of graduating college. But HempWood began in 2019 after working in China in the bamboo industry for 14 years. And we are based in Murray, Kentucky, partnering with Murray State University and the Hudson School of Ag, which is the whole reason that we're here. They make things possible. And they have been working on specialty crops as a replacement for tobacco for 2 decades now, and hemp fits the bill. So HempWood is a hardwood. A hardwood means your oaks, your hickories, your Brazilian cherries, your teaks, your mahoganies, those type of things. A softwood is what you frame a house with, like your pine 2x4s or cedar posts, whereas a hardwood is something that you make flooring, furniture, cabinetry out of. So we are an interior hardwood, and it's a face grade, means you want to look at the wood, you don't want to paint it. You can stain it, that's fine, but painting something and making it opaque just kind of defeats the purpose of having that type of wood in. When people call all the time and say, hey, I want to frame my house with HempWood, what can I do? And I say, well, would you frame your house with oak? They say, no, of course not. So, all right, it's 2 completely different categories. So what goes into HempWood? I think the easiest way to explain it is magic, because we're still trying to really figure out all the details of the science. And magic is what you call things before the science is completely understood. But we've figured out some pretty incredible things with Murray State University and with Oregon State University, both of which we've worked with for a long time. So the hemp is the primary material in HempWood. The hemp stalks are what we use. They grow in 4 months. They can grow in all different types of climates, the whole way from Canada down to Mexico and all over the world, Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, things like that. And we source all of our hemp from within 100 miles of the factory here. When we give out contracts, we actually try to give out contracts within 20 miles of the factory, because it keeps down on the transportation, which actually also leads to less emissions. The hemp is made from the full length fiber stalks. So it's not the little Christmas tree ones that you might see somewhere on a CBD farm. These are the ones that grow 8 to 12 feet tall. And they're a row crop, which means they're planted like wheat. You actually use a wheat drill. You space them 7 inches apart when you're doing it. We take those stalks after they've been harvested in the field and the leaves fall off and people have taken off the seed and the flower and things like that. They come into the mill in a baled format. In this area, because of how much rain we get, it's typically round bales. Whereas if you go out west where it's drier, they use square bales. These come in and we break open the cell structure of the hurd, which is the woody core of the hemp stalk. And then we impregnate that with a soy-based adhesive to reinforce the cell walls. When you reinforce those cell walls, what you're doing is that soft woody core of the hemp stalk that is attached to the strong fiber, what people used to make ropes out of, that soft woody core becomes a hard woody core with the reinforcement by the proteins from the soy flour. So about 10 or 12% of hempwood is actually soy. That soy all comes locally as well. I think a lot of it comes from Illinois and Kentucky. There are two local areas that send us the soy. We get it by the truckload, and we get probably a truckload of soy every quarter to 6 months. We get a truckload of hemp every other week, something like that. So the hemp, once it's been dipped into the adhesive, it's dried out using renewable energy. So our electricity is hydro here at the plant, and that comes from Kentucky Dam. And then our thermal energy in the summertime is mainly made from our waste material. In the wintertime, we still have to pull some fossil fuels, but next winter, I want to be able to replace that somehow, some way. Once it's dried out, then it's loaded into the press. We press it into a block, or in the wood industry, it's called a cant. It's like a square log. Once you make it not round, you make it squared. We're pressing it into that. They're 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches by 6 feet long. And we bake them in an oven. That oven is coming from our thermal energy, which is our bioburner burning our waste, which then heats a fluid that travels through the radiator. The radiator in there has a fan on it. That radiator came from an old tobacco barn. The fan blows across the radiator. It heats the oven. The oven is an old shipping container we recycled into making an oven. And then it bakes those blocks. Once those are baked, then they are demolded, which means pull them out of the metal mold that they're in. And we let them rest for 2 weeks before we cut it into boards that turn into flooring. The chemistry is the real science behind what we're doing here. The chemistry of hempwood started at Oregon State University. It migrated to Murray State University to fit the hemp requirements. This chemistry is used in pure bond plywood, which means it's a soy-based adhesive. It does not have formaldehyde in it. And that is a really big deal for us because I still have a lung condition for dealing with formaldehyde so long in the bamboo industry. This idea is not new, it's new-ish. It came from people wanting to have an alternative for their plywood to having formaldehyde in your house. And so they came up with a no VOC, which means no volatile organic compounds coming out of this glue. And that's a really big deal. We have test results that show that. We modified that at Murray State University in order to fit it into our hempwood production process. And a clean glue means a clean product. A clean product in your home or business means improved efficiency for people that are there, whether it's in a business, improved efficiency of your employees. There's Harvard studies that show you've got somewhere between 6.3 and 9% improved efficiency by not having VOCs or toxic compounds in the air that you're breathing in. It also is shown that not having toxicity in your home leads to healthier children or a healthier home life. Because if you're breathing in a bunch of dirty stuff that comes from petrochemical, then you can have asthmatic conditions in your lungs. This has been proven with asbestos. This has been proven with different dirty chemicals that have gone into drywall. This has been proven with people ingesting lead paint back in the day. So the materials that go in your home directly affect the outcome of not only you, but your children, especially when they're in a developmental stage. So that's a really, really big deal. People need to understand not only what's going into their body when they're eating or drinking something, the toxins, but also what's going into your home, because you're going to be breathing that in for years to come. The energy here, we located the facility close to Kentucky Dam on purpose. And that's because we can get our hydropower for our electricity here. So it does not have a fossil fuel impact. That's a big deal for us. I wish that was me in that boat you see there fishing, but unfortunately, between the factory and the farm, we don't really get to go out and do too much, except for my wife and I take walks on Sunday mornings. We're usually kind of putzing around on the farm. Our energy here comes from our waste. The hemp that falls out in the process is ground up in that grinder you see there, the big white thing. When it comes out, it gets loaded into our bioburner. That bioburner then feeds it into, or the auger feeds it into the bioburner from that bin we have. And then it heats the fluid. That fluid is then travels around the plant. I think it's about 1.75 miles of actual coil in the mill. That is 3-inch down to 2-inch, down to 1-inch in some places. And then it has fans that blow across the radiators. The radiators then, with the fans blowing across it, do our drying, do our baking, and do our kilns, as well as heating the building. So next year, I want to get another bioburner in here. So in the wintertime, we're not relying upon fossil fuels either. Whereas right now in the summer, we're not. About the product, the HempWood product is flooring is our primary. We make lumber in mill number 1 that's cut down and dried, and then it's sent to our second mill, which is in an old tobacco co-op. And that tobacco co-op is turned into our flooring factory. So we make flooring, we make panels, we do a little bit of cabinetry, we do a little bit of furniture, but we try to lean towards furniture and cabinet kits, because then people can make it themselves, and they're actually probably better makers of cabinets and tables than us. Our expertise is flooring. So being a face grade interior hardwood, we have a rift sawn and a live sawn, which is very similar to wood. When you have a live sawn, that means you take a log and you just cut it into boards horizontally, kind of parallel to the ground. When you have a rift sawn, that means you take the log, you quarter it, and then you take each one of those quadrants and you're going to cut it according to the grain pattern. So you get a very linear visual. And that linear visual is what people are typically after if they're looking for a replacement for wood. If they're looking for something kind of artsy, kind of funky, kind of cool, then they're into the live sawn. So I can say the art areas, especially on the coast, you're kind of looking at Asheville, you're looking at San Francisco, you're looking at Portland, kind of the places that are a little bit funky. They usually buy the live sawn, which is my favorite. And the more traditional areas like a Nashville or like a New York or like Denver, we sell a lot too. Those areas typically go for the rift sawn. So you can get it in both types. Both types are the same price. In the wood industry, rift sawn is a little bit more expensive, whereas live sawn means better utilization of the log. Because it costs us the same to make both, we sell them at the same price. So people are getting a deal when they're buying the rift sawn when they compare it to the rift sawn out in the market. Whereas with the live sawn, people are getting kind of funky, something kind of funky, kind of cool, something that's different, that has a different visual that stands out and people say, wow, what is that? Our flooring, it's on an engineered format. An engineered format means you're not going to have cupping and bowing complaints because it's been balanced on a piece of plywood. That piece of plywood is sourced from West Virginia, from FSC logs that have no added formaldehyde. It's actually kind of our big brother company, the guys that take care of us, with Cargill and Columbia Forestry Products. Cargill supplying the soy for the glue, Columbia Forestry Products making the non-formaldehyde plywood. That's all grown in West Virginia. Our HempWood flooring has a Janka hardness of 2200. And if anybody says, what the heck is that? It's 20% harder than hickory. Hickory is the hardest domestic wood that's readily available. And so it's really hard. We put a 4mm top layer on it. That is your standard for an engineered wood floor. It's got a tongue and groove, so you can install it the same as you would an engineered oak floor. So you can nail it down, you can glue it down, or you can float it by putting glue on the bottom of the tongue and putting it together. We did this engineered format because it allows you to put your flooring down on a concrete subfloor without have to worrying about buckling. We did the engineered format also because HempWood's so hard, it's hard to nail. And so in putting on an engineered format, you're nailing through the plywood. And in nailing through the plywood, you don't have to worry about your nail kind of buckling because the wood's too hard for it, which we have seen that problem before. We use bonus sealers and finishes, and those are water-based. So they are part of that no VOC emitting flooring that we do. We offer our products in a site finish, which people call unfinished in the production side. On the install and homeowner side, they call it a site finish. We have a natural pre-finish, and then we have the custom color collection, which is a pain in my butt to make, but it does look really beautiful. We call it custom because we hand apply all the stains there. And it comes with a cost, but it also comes with a story. So recently, Nashville's just earned a new resident, or Franklin, Tennessee specifically. Christina Hack from HGTV has just joined forces with HempWood since she's moved to Nashville or bought a home in Nashville. She's currently moving into, I think she spends 1 or 2 weeks a month here. But she found out about HempWood and said she was looking for a local sustainable material to be able to use for some of her projects and in her own home. So we installed a floor in her house in January, and my wife and I went over there and we got to take a bunch of pictures and meet their family and kind of just talk and get to know each other. And she said, hey, I want to be part of the solution, because historically she had done economic projects, flip or flop. Someone was buying a low-cost house and trying to improve it so someone could live in there. Now she's moved more onto the design side with Christina on the Coast. And Christina on the Coast is where she goes in and designs high-end homes, and she's looking for the best material, not the most affordable material. And she has a new show that you're not supposed to really repeat this out loud, but she's filming a show outside of Nashville now about going country. And they haven't released the name. They haven't really exactly said what is going to be in it. But I know that HempWood was one of the product selections for doing this because she was looking for local and sustainable. And she figured she can't do an entire TV show based on barnwood, because that is a recycled, or what they call reclaimed in the industry. That's a recycled wood. They tear down a barn, they turn it into a floor and gives you that beautiful country aesthetic. But there's only so much of that you can do for a TV show. And she heard about HempWood through some of our salespeople, and she ordered some product and kind of looked at it and said, yeah, it's okay, but it needs to be prettier. And when we installed the floor, she had ordered a whitewash, and she said, you know what? She's like, I like this. We need to see a color assortment. If you get a color assortment, I'd like to work with you. And when we were trying to figure out what that actually meant, work with us, she said, I don't want your money. She's like, I want to actually be a part of the company. So now Christina Hack is working to offset her carbon footprint with her vinyl flooring line and with some of the other things that she does that are affordable, but maybe not sustainable, by having a HempWood line that offers people the full spectrum of, you can get vinyl flooring that is affordable, but it's not sustainable. You can get a oak floor, which she has a flooring line, which is traditional, but you're cutting down an old growth forest to get the best wood. And then you can get a HempWood, which is your eco-friendly alternative that's 100% made in America with no toxic chemicals in it. So she's been really cool. I didn't know what to exactly expect when I was installing floor at her house, but we ended up like having tacos for the afternoon and riding around on her side-by-side, like cruising around her horse farm in Franklin. So I guess that kind of ends our presentation. Having a female voice for the company makes a huge difference, because our audience and the decision maker in every home is the woman of the household, typically. And so if we're going to put something in our house, I know I got to ask my wife, Bing, is this okay or not? Or she usually tells me what's supposed to be in there. And so kind of joining forces and having my wife, who works with our largest investor outside of my wife and I, David, his wife Lucrezia, and my wife actually come up with the brand, and they have their brand meetings and marketing meetings every week. We have Alyssa, who does all of our communication, which makes stuff look good and pretty, more well refined than what it would be if it was me and the guys in here that make the wood. And then we have Christina, and Christina is our brand ambassador, and Beth, who handles the Nashville, kind of the middle Tennessee market for us, who's been saying, hey, Greg, you need to go and talk to these folks, because in Nashville, you've got a powerhouse of women who essentially call the shots of what's going to be used in their homes or in their businesses and things like that. And Beth's been getting in front of all the different architect firms and all the different designers and all the different kind of grassroots movement, making this thing a full circle of how we get the story out there, I guess. Because our biggest problem right now is 99% of America doesn't know what HempWood is. And it needs people like yourselves to say, you know what, that's pretty cool. I'll start out by building a shelf in my house, a bookshelf for just a little floating shelf that can go for your spice rack or something like that. And then it grows on you, and you say, the next time I'm going to do my study or my home office with flooring, might as well use HempWood, because it puts you in a positive mood when you're in that room. And it's not just a subliminal thing. It's actually your senses saying, I'm not breathing in any dirty chemicals. I actually did the right thing by putting sustainable material in my house rather than cutting down an 80-year-old oak tree or a 200-year-old Brazilian cherry. So if you got to get a hold of anybody or you want to see anything, Beth, who's been a member of this group for a while and who actually found us at the farmer's market 2 seasons ago and said, hey, I want to be part of the solution, give her a shout. Her information's right on here. She drags me into Nashville every once in a while to talk to people and things like that. And she always fills up my belly before I come back with some sort of treats that I've never had before. I don't know, it's kind of working. It's pretty cool what we're doing, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. I know I learned a lot, and we have a ton of questions in the chat. So if you have a few more minutes to stick on and answer questions, I think folks would appreciate that. Before we move over to questions, I wanted to see, Bing, if there's anything that you wanted to add or anything that you wanted to mention to our group. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think Greg said everything.
Awesome. Well, if we were in person, we'd be giving you a huge round of applause. So thank you again for sharing with us. As I mentioned, we do have some questions, so I'll just start up at the top. Got a question, does hemp make building houses cheaper? And I think you talked a little bit about the price point, but if you can kind of expand on that for our group. Oh, you're on mute, Greg.
HempWood is priced directly competitive with your traditional hardwoods. So if you're going to buy an American-made oak floor, black walnut, hickory, things like that, it is directly competitive. And if you give Beth a shout, she can figure something out for you where it's locally available in the Nashville area, or she can bring you out to the factory and get you some factory direct pricing if you're going to do a tour out here.
That was one of our other questions, so we'll come back to that in a second. Renee asked if HempWood has any building certifications associated with it, like Green Guard or Floor Score or any others.
So HempWood has undergone all of its ASTM standards. And so all of these ASTM test standards are what the basis is for getting your different Floor Score or Green Guard. We are currently doing our LCA, our life cycle analysis, to get our EPD environmental product declaration, which then is used for the green guard or the floor score. And so by September, those documents are supposed to be finished. So we can then go for one of the above listed qualifications. It usually takes like a couple of years to get those things because of how much kind of looking underneath of the hood they do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a huge accomplishment. We have a couple questions about kind of the growing process. Someone asked what pests are usually present in hemp and hempwood. Do you have any pest problems?
We absolutely do. Critters love it. It's just like anything you do on the farm. And so if you're not spraying herbicides and pesticides, you're going to get a lot of weeds that grow right around the edges. The key is to get the canopy up. And so when your canopy gets up, then you don't get the weeds in the bottom. Usually the outer 5 feet have those. And so the outer 5 feet of the area, you have to come by and kind of weed whack right before you do your harvesting, if it's on a smaller scale, or you try to cut it a little bit higher up for the last swath that goes through. So you're not cutting down the weeds and getting it in your bales. As far as the pests, there's these green caterpillars that bite really bad whenever we're out during harvest season. So never wear shorts when you're out harvesting hemp, or you're going to get bit by the caterpillars. I can say that ladybugs are a thing in our area. I know out west, grasshoppers love to eat the flower on the top of the hemp. Deer don't really like it. They actually kind of avoid the fields where hemp's growing. Doves love it. If you're into dove hunting, I know not everybody here is a hunter, but doves are absolutely everywhere. And something that helps our farmers make money off of hemp is in the state of Kentucky, you are allowed to give dove hunting rights for your farm if you're growing sunflowers or hemp. For people can come in and do dove hunting, and you can actually make $150 or $200 an acre from the state for allowing that for a 2-week period. And it pays for the seed to be able to grow the plant. So birds are after it. Deer are not after it. There's all types of bugs that are out there, but I would say it's not as much that they love the hemp as it is that you don't spray pesticides on it.
Yeah, so we had another question about pesticides. Caitlin said she heard that some organic farms struggle with their neighbors using pesticides and sprayers spilling onto the organic farm's crops because of wind gusts. And she was wondering if y'all have that sort of problem on your farm.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. I can say that our water supply has to be uphill from the neighbor's farm because we drink water straight from the ground. We have well and septic where we're at. And so being on well and septic, you can see when they spray the fields in front of us, it's only about 100 yards from our front door to get to the big ag fields. And when those are sprayed, everything dies. If it rains within 72 hours after that spray, before it's actually kind of leached into the ground and filtered, then it gets into the water supply because it's still on the top of the water table. And it looks like someone changed their oil in the creek. So that's a thing. The drainage in the farm right in front of us has a pond that is essentially dead because of that's where the drainage goes into that pond. And so there's very little life, where our ponds on our farm, which are 500 yards away, 600 yards away, they don't have that drainage into them. And so they got ducks and they got frogs and they got turtles and all that stuff. So that is a big thing. There are smart choices, just like everything, and there are cheap choices in agriculture. And so the spray that you get and the way that you spray it, basically in between rainstorms, makes all the difference in the world. Because you can get sprays like on our farm that you can spray your fruit trees and you can spray stuff like that, but it's with like neem oil and things like that usually costs a little bit more. So it's not a big scalable thing, but it keeps the bugs off of what you're doing. And the cheapest, easiest way to keep your grasses and weeds down is to spray weed killer on it. You can't do that on our farm, but our farm looks a little bit rattier than the one right in front of us that's been sprayed and looks all neat and prim and proper. And our apples don't look as pretty as they do if you buy just your regular apple at the store, because they do have some insects and they do have some blemishes and they do get little spots on them and things like that. But it actually translates into something that's healthier for you. Just like a floor is not supposed to be made out of vinyl and have the exact same knot every seventh board. When they make it look like wood, it's supposed to have your little blemishes and knots and different character to it. And fruit that is grown organically, or at least responsibly, looks like that. It's not perfect. It's just like a human's body. If you want it to look fake, go ahead and get all your surgery and all that stuff done. If you want it to look real and natural, exercise a little bit. That's kind of the way that everything works in this world.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think we've been kind of raised to think everything should look the same and material. And if you go to the grocery store, you know, you only see the best of the best and everything is identical. So I love that you mentioned that. Have you had any of your neighbors come over and ask you about your organic practices, or, you know, why your pond has turtles and theirs doesn't? Have you used that as kind of a learning opportunity for them?
Honestly, the reason that our farm is organic is because the land is not suitable for row crop. So it's too hilly. So you had to figure out another way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make as much money. All of the neighbors know that, oh, hey, that was kind of the lesser quality land for being able to run big equipment over it. And they know it takes more work, but you're a little bit happier doing it. And so people come over to see it, to say hi, to just be like, oh, wow, that's cool. But then they go back to their day-to-day of making more money by growing corn. So honestly, it's people from the city that come out and say, wow, this is cool. This is the way it's supposed to be. When you're not in a densely populated area, you don't think as much about the things because you're not kind of choking on tailpipe fumes walking down the street every day. You're not worried about what's happening because the other side of your farm or the tree line has trees on it. And so the denser populated you are, the more you realize what overcrowding or these different practices do. When you're out in the countryside, it's really neat to go on a walk through LBL and see all the trees where people haven't been harvesting those trees for years and years and years, and everything's gone back to normal and natural. But people look at it and say, well, if I'm a farmer, I have to make a living. And making a living driving a tractor across 2,000 acres is a lot easier than making a living going and spraying neem oil on a fruit tree.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So Greg, you mentioned a little bit earlier about visiting your facility, and I think you have some interested people here to see how you do the work you do. Can you talk a little bit about how you can visit the facility? Do you offer tours? What parts are open to the public?
Every Friday and Saturday. If y'all want to talk to Beth, she can arrange people coming out and kind of seeing what we got and what we're doing. Fridays and Saturdays, we always have people that come through. Friday afternoon, Saturday morning. It's about 2 hours west of Nashville. Every tour ends in the gift shop, which also doubles as our office. So you can kind of get an idea of what we're doing, what you're seeing, all of that stuff, and then take some at least sample packs back with you to plan your next home inspiration. Or you can buy a picture frame and put your college diploma in it. There's all these different things you can do with HempWood. As far as coming out, the best times of the year, the weather is best here in May, as far as temperature and just kind of things being green and kind of getting back to it. The hemp to look at is best in August because it's like 8 or 10 feet tall if you want to get that picture of yourself standing in front of a 10-foot tall hemp crop. Yeah, that's about it. Come on out, talk to Beth, arrange it, come out on Friday afternoon, Saturday morning. It's a pretty cool weekend thing to do. You can get a cabin at Land Between the Lakes, Ken Lake State Park or Lake Barclay State Park. Go for a hike in the woods in LBL and come over and see the factory and get some country living happening.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, we'll have to connect with our events coordinator at TWIG and see if we can organize like a TWIG field trip or something out there. We still do have more questions. They keep coming in. People are super interested in the topic. So Greg, you mentioned a little bit about some of your markets, like you sell to people kind of all over. And someone was asking if you find that the regional environment or the climate in different areas makes a difference in the application of the HempWood product.
Yes, it does. So very dry areas are our last concern for HempWood. So being a natural wood product and being a math dork myself, the width to thickness ratio of wood products is best suited at 10:1. So 10 times your thickness to your width, and that way you don't get cupping and bowing if the moisture content of the wood does not have to migrate more than 3% up or down. So wood coming out of our facilities here is 8 to 10% in the wintertime and 10 to 12% in the summertime. And so selling it into areas that are extremely dry, it's going to dry out and shrink. Selling it to areas that are moderate or humid is great because we're humid, so you can touch the moderate scenario. You just can't really touch the dry scenario unless you let it acclimate on the job site. And so the one hindrance of HempWood is we do not sell flooring to dry areas like Las Vegas or high country Colorado in a finished format. We sell it in a site finish, which we talked about earlier. It means there's no coating on it. So it'll show up, it'll acclimate to the area, it gets installed, and then you put the coating on it. And that way you don't have little cracks and checks in your floor that break through the coating. So that is our one hindrance on what it is, selling it to those areas. But that also leads to an opportunity of the next HempWood facility will be built in a dry area, so they can sell it to all the dry places. That way we can kind of cover off that 40% of the United States that we don't sell our full product range.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that. Someone was asking about where you can buy your product. I know you mentioned the gift store. We have Beth on the line. Are there any big box stores that you sell through, or what are the ways that we could buy your product?
So we do not sell through big box stores at this point in our product life cycle because we want to give the mom and pop shops and the independently owned and the artists the chance first. If you go through the route of slow adoption through the grassroots movements and the independently owned places, you can have a 20-year product life cycle. If you go straight to Lowe's or Home Depot, you become a commodity and you have a 10-year life cycle. So we set aside the first 10 years of HempWood to go through independently owned stores or dealers or retailers or factory reps. And so Beth is leading the charge in the Nashville area. She has accounts at Goodwood in Nashville who hold a lot of specialty woods and really cool stuff. They specialize in like live edge tables and furniture, cabinetry, flooring, things like that. She also has R&S flooring, I believe it is, in Franklin, Tennessee, or just south of Nashville, that hold our flooring product as well. And if you want to get a hold directly with Beth, she can direct you to all those different places, all those different things that you can do with it. And you can see projects going on in Nashville and things like that. Outside of the local market here, we have factory reps who bring it to their local retailers and stores in hotspots like Denver, in hotspots like Asheville, in hotspots like Austin, Texas. We also have a significant presence on the coast. So the West Coast, California, 25% of our sales go there through Flooring Lines Incorporated. It's two of my buddies have a factory rep company. They represent factories into the flooring retail industry. They do the West Coast pretty heavily. We have Genesis Global, who are based out of the Atlanta area, and they represent us into commercial builds, specifically retail. They do a lot of stuff with like small footprint, high-end retail stores, getting materials into those. We have Peak Sales, which is my buddy Nick. He lives outside of Boston. He's repping up in the New England area, and he just signed on last month. So he's new to the game, but I saw him at a trade show and we had dinner, and he's like, "Hey, you know I sell stuff, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, let me sell your HempWood." And we didn't have anybody touching that area. So it's kind of just getting out there as we go. Across the United States right now, there's about 30 points of sale that are all independently owned stores. And we do sell direct if no one's servicing your area. In selling direct, when someone contacts us from an area, if there's someone in that general location, we say, "Hey, look, talk to this person." If there's not, we take the deal. And we're starting to get into commercial stuff. So BMW opened their first electric car dealership with HempWood in it in November. In January, we had the first Target zero waste store in San Francisco that opened. The BMW dealership was in LA. The Target was in San Francisco. We have the first Chipotle, which is going all green. They're going to do hemp plastics and hemp wood in all their stores. They opened their first one in Irvine, California, which is right outside of LA. We have Fender that's doing guitars with it. We have Microsoft, which is incorporating it into their new campus out in Washington. We have JP Morgan that spec'd it for their building in New York, and we haven't heard a peep from them for over a year. All of these companies that are going the carbon neutral route by 2030 are talking to us about what to do. If anybody's got a contact to Oracle that's opening up in Nashville, let Beth know, because I know she's been she's trying to figure her way in there for like a year now. That would be amazing if something happened there. Because these companies, when you tell them, "Hey, productivity is increased with healthy materials by 6 or 8%, if you're $1 billion company, that's a lot bigger deal than, well, I can buy vinyl flooring for $5 or I can buy HempWood for 10. That's a big difference when you say 6% to the bottom line of $50 billion. The answer is yes. And that's the way that these things get out there, because when somebody's got a tech company, somebody's got a green story that they have to tell, then they go for the right choice, not the most profitable choice.
Yeah, we know, as more and more Gen Zers in particular start to join the workforce, that they care a lot about those sorts of things. So I think there's a compelling business argument there. Beth, I wanted to see if there's anything you wanted to add to that for the kind of Nashville specific audience we have on today.
I just want to say that we're particularly fortunate because the factory is so close to us. So in terms of sustainability, it's that much more essential, and really has been great for the local Murray economy. They lost a big manufacturing plant right before HempWood came on. So they pay a great wage. People are able to buy homes in the area. And so in addition to being a local product, which is one of my passions, so anybody who's a local war, you gotta love a locally product made in the state adjacent to us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Greg and Bing and Beth, for joining us and educating us on your company and your product. As you can tell, people are incredibly interested. So I would expect some TWIG visitors out at your factory in the near future. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over at this time to Elaine Boyd, our Vice President, to do some TWIG announcements.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Greg, for that great presentation. I think Jen is pulling up our PowerPoint. So while she's doing that, thank you all, as always, for deciding to spend your first Friday in April with us. We really appreciate it. As always, we like to start with kind of centering everyone on our mission. Our mission, as always, is to empower, inspire, and connect women who are committed to environmental sustainability. Thank you all for helping us achieve that goal once again this year. And we couldn't do what we do without our sponsors. Huge thank you to our sponsors. And we'd love to have more. So if you or your workplace is interested in becoming a sponsor, please go to our webpage, TennesseeWomenInGreen.com. And I think there's a landing spot on the homepage for Become a Sponsor. And we also give a huge shout out to all our new and renewing members. And I wanted to highlight this new category we have of sustaining membership, which is just $5 a month. And so you can select that, and when you sign up, you choose recurring payments. You can consult our website for information on that membership and all our other membership and individual sponsorship categories. Also, we're really excited because we have the first book selection for 2022 from our Iris's Book Club, and it is Wild Spectacle. It's a collection of essays by author, activist, naturalist, and organic farmer, Janice Ray. So thank you to our new Iris's Book Club leaders, Allie Omans and Kim Bailey. And speaking of our book club, on Tuesday, April 26th at 5:30 p.m., the Iris's Book Club will meet to discuss Wild Spectacle, and they'll be meeting on the outdoor porch at Shelby Bottoms Nature Center. Also, as you're aware, the Iris's Book Club always pairs reading a book with a service activity. So the following weekend, they'll be participating on Saturday, April 30th from 1 to 3 p.m. in the City Nature Challenge. They'll be working together to contribute to citizen science. So be sure and volunteer with them. They're meeting at the Deep Well Trailhead at Warner Park. And you can consult our website for more information. We'd love to have you join us for an outing at the brand new Nashville SC Stadium. So we're having a TWIG soccer game meetup. There's more information on the website, and you can also contact Kim at Tennessee Women in Green to sign up. Next week, April 4th through 9th is Tennessee Food Waste Awareness Week. So there's a week full of virtual engagement, educational opportunities, statewide food drives, and regional events. You can get some more information on that at getfoodsmarttn.com. On Thursday, April 7th, from noon to 1, Tennessee Nature Conservancy is having a virtual wildflower hike. And the presenter on that is the fabulous Sally Palmer. So check our website. You can actually register at a link on our events calendar. Then Friday, April 8th through Sunday, April 10th, there will be Speaking for the Trees in Laughlin Springs Park, an art show and sale at the Shelby Bottoms Nature Center. That's being brought by a collaboration of the Friends of Shelby Parks and the Nashville Tree Conservation Court. And then the Governor's Environmental Stewardship Awards has extended the nomination deadlines to April 8th. If you Google Governor's Environmental Stewardship Awards, it will take you directly to that webpage. On Monday, April 11th, from 6:30 to 8:30, Fisk University will be having another virtual community conversation. This one is Family and Community Emergency Preparedness and Resiliency, led by Dr. Robert Wingfield, and you have his email address there. That's how you sign up. And then on Thursday, April 14th from 9 to noon, Urban Green Lab is having a virtual sustainable classrooms hub training. You can also register for that at a link on our events calendar. And then I want to mention Plant a Tree for Tennessee. So you can reserve and purchase native trees to plant in your yard. You have to reserve by April 17th, and then you pick up the trees on April 23rd at one of several volunteer-run pickup locations in Tennessee. You'll get one bare root seedling per $2.99 donation. So this is the biggest tree planting event of the year for Green Interchange, and they have a goal of planting 20,000 trees in one weekend. You can get more information on their website. On Friday, April 29th at 7 p.m., there's a national expert and author on building sustainable communities, Katie McCammett, will speak at the Nashville Food Project. This is a free event hosted by Burns Village and Farm Agrihood. And you can get more information at burnsvillagefarm.com. This is a really cool project of individuals and families working together to develop a co-housing community on the outskirts of Burns, Tennessee. And I just want to take one moment to congratulate my colleague and our TWIG colleague, Dr. Jen Tribble, on her new role as Director of Policy and Planning at Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. So congrats to Jen.
Thanks, Lillian.
And everyone, please be sure to send us an events, job postings, and anything you like to share. You have our connection information on the screen, our Gmail address, and be sure to connect with us on all our social networks. And this is not an April Fool's joke. We hope you have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the month. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.